Live broadcast of this.
Oh, wow.
So when we start here, I'm going to be addressing my audience first, the Galaxy Cast audience first. So don't be like, who's he talking to? I'm going to address them first, and then we're going to start. It's just, we decided to do a live broadcast to make it different. And hey, if you're going to talk about podcasting, why the heck not podcast it? Yeah. So it was kind of like kind of a no-brainer for us. So I just, in case you're all kind of freaked out, like, why is he talking about? That's why. Third person. I will be talking in third person. It's kind of what they're odd first. Okay, we are. Figures. I lost my connection. Hang on.
The joys of Windows 7.
Yes, we are experiencing technical difficulties.
Actually, I grabbed one of these. It's good stuff. Christian was into those, and he was listening to them. We put a show out, like we usually put them out on a Friday.
Yeah.
And he was listening to that episode, and I'm like, oh, if we had a business card, this is how I'd want it. And we're throwing things. About 6 hours after it got posted, he sent a pencil of that. So this is what you guys looking for?
That's beautiful.
Yes.
What we do on ours is Omar, who's one of you guys who created About Heroes, basically does a sketch for everyone.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, we looked at yours, we were like, we gotta do something.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
See, we're trendsetters.
We are. We all are in some way. Yeah. Ours is different. Like, hi, get brought up by a company, and this is what happens.
Hey, at least you have a card. I don't have mine.
Or get free postcards by doing that.
Hey, there you go. I just made mine today, so. It was either that or the back of like Kraft macaroni and cheese boxes.
It figures. I had no problem out there. I come in here, problems galore.
I just record it and we'll post it later.
Yeah, you know what?
As if it was live.
Pressure's on.
Yeah, I'm gonna record this one. We'll just do it that way.
Technical difficulties.
All my life is already like, what is
And this is a classic example of podcasting 101.
Okay, really? Yeah. Okay, we're just gonna record this back way. All right. Hey, Galaxy Cast fans. Well, I'm not even on. Hold on. Three. That's our joke. Oh. Like, hey, Galaxy Cast fans, we are here at the podcast panel at Albany Comic-Con, and I'm sure if you're listening at home, you were very disappointed. I got into the podcast panel room, and there's no internet in the room.
It's like shielding.
Yeah, it's ray shielded in here. I don't know why, but it is. No, not ray shielded. So we're in here with a group of people, and we're going to talk about podcasting 101. I think we titled this "How Geeks Become Famous," correct? Something like that.
That sounds perfect.
I think that's what I came up with.
Brilliant.
So I thought we'd take a minute and introduce each person here, kind of go down, pimp out your podcast a little, if you may, and let us know what you do and what your podcast is about, and tell us a little bit about something you guys do. So I'll start at the end down here.
Okay, well, my name is Jeff Hartz. I'm with About Heroes. That's www.aboutheroes.com. Beside me is one of my friends and my co-host, Dante Beavers.
Yeah, Dante Beavers. I'm also on aboutheroes.com. Like you said, I'm the co-host.
Yep.
East Coast, anyway.
Yes, and basically we're an East Coast version of our website. We have 3 different groups. We have our main group, which is based out of Kentucky. It was created by 2 guys about 10 years ago, Omar and Dan. One of their friends, they just basically wanted to sit around and do a podcast about, basically ranting about comics. And then one of the guys moved to the West Coast, and now we have a West Coast chapter, and then I moved back home to New York from down south, and now I do the East Coast chapter.
So you're like a worldwide podcaster.
We try. If we can get somebody in Kuala Lumpur, then we'd be international.
I think that was a call out right there.
There you go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I already did.
Oh, okay. So,
Yeah.
So now it's my turn.
I'm sorry, you guys both went.
Pressure's all on.
We're
It's all
together.
here, man.
Yes.
But not together.
My wife is in the audience. Yes.
There we go. My name is Matt Herring, and I'm the co-host of the Secret Identity podcast, which we are out of Springfield, Massachusetts. In 1 year alone, we got a hurricane, a tornado, an earthquake, a microburst, and a blackout. We got everything, and kept us going. We still kept going on strong. We have done the show for about 6.5 years, never missed a week. Even during all that stuff, we somehow managed to find time to, and power, to put the show together, to put it out. We've got a worldwide audience, which our show has just been growing and growing and growing. And over the last couple months, we've ended up on a country radio station in Albany, 1410 W, oh boy, We're not going to play
Oh boy, yeah.
Oh boy. I believe it's WMUA, 1410 Classic Country and Comic Book Podcast. We do 2 shows a week. One of them strictly comic books. The one that we have started to tailor make towards the for the radio show is more of a pop culture, where we'll talk about music, we'll talk about movies, TV, stuff like that. The thing that we kind of separates us from a little bit, my show partner Brian Latendry and we do an all ages show. So there's no swearing, there's no anything going on.
Oh, damn.
I know.
Not us.
Simply because we've got kids. When we're recording a show, we don't want to have to worry about kids. I mean, we don't swear anyway. But we want to make sure that if you're a father listening to the show, you're not going to have to sit there and go, okay, well, let me explain what that word just was. We want to make this as easy to listen to as possible. A positive show. If we don't like something, we just won't talk about it. So that's secretidentitypodcast.com with some cool business cards right up here in the front for everybody to take.
Yeah, by the way, we all got business cards up front.
Most of us. Most of us.
Yeah. Share.
Oh, you're still in sidekick status, so you know.
These guys know how that goes.
Yeah.
Except this sidekick's kicking back.
Oh, right.
He does. He kicks my butt half the time. What happened?
I get my honorary cape next month. Just so you know. Just so you know.
Right now, he's still in domino mask status.
His theory is no capes.
No games. Yeah. My name's Bob Chrisman. I've been podcasting. Oh goodness, 2001. So how many years is that?
11.
Wow. I actually started podcasting in a very ironic way. I had a buddy. I went to his wedding, and in a drunken fit, he says, "Let's call my podcast." We're like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "What's a podcast?" And he started explaining it to me, and we all called up. It was a really bad idea, by the way. Don't ever do that. We called up because he had one of these ones where you could call in and you could record, and it would automatically just put it right on the net. And I was like, "Oh God, delete that," because that was horrible. And so I got into this podcasting thing. I started out blogging first because somebody, like, on a dare said, "I dare you to read every Star Wars book in timeline order and blog about it." And I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like that kid in
Charlie, you should accept.
I'm like the kid in A Christmas Story. You know, if you triple dog dare me, I'm jumping on it because I won't stop.
To me, that's an everyday thing. I mean, you want to dare me, I'll just sit down and read them.
You, sir, are the Marty Stinson of podcasting Star Wars.
I kind of am, and it's really bad. So I started blogging about it, and then somebody was like, "Well, you should just podcast about it." Now, and so that's what I started doing. I did this podcast called The Jedi Council Speaks. That one lasted 8 years. And that one got kind of fun. We got some interference, cell phone stuff, just normal. That got fun, but after a while, I started to realize the term Jedi Council is actually copyrighted, by the way. Something we could talk about later, lessons you've learned, you know.
Right.
And it was kind of like, oh, shut that down or face illegal tea. I was like, oh, shut that down. So I shut that podcast down, and I opened up. We actually met a guy named Mike Wilkerson who graciously, I guess you could say, kind of bought us up. Graciously, and took us on as his podcasting team. He's like, get some partners, have some fun, do it with more than one person. And that's actually changed my viewpoint of podcasting. I started off with a buddy named Ian Palmer. He was an English dude that came in and gave his little viewpoint on things. And the next thing I knew, I had Ian and Gary, and then I had Ian, Gary, and Dan. And now I had me, Gary, Dan. Then it went from me, Gary, Dan to me, Gary, Dan, and David. What's the latest team? It was me, Gary, David, and Carrie. So it's like, we keep rotating guests, which I like, actually. It's been kind of fun to do that. So.
Well, I think I said that to you like in an email,
Yeah.
that, to me, it's always been a question of, you need to have at least 3 people for a decent podcast. Otherwise, it's just 2 people, bouncing things back and forth off each other.
Yeah.
Who really wants to listen to that?
There's only 2 of us on our show.
That explains it all.
There's 2 of us on ours too, but we do have guests from time to time.
So, so interviews and stuff count?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Then we're a good
Otherwise, it's just him and I, and who wants to listen to that?
I mean, I have a great voice and all, but that doesn't mean I'm always charismatic that everybody wants to listen to me talk all the time.
Yeah, in my head, I think that everybody just wants to hear me talk for 2.5, 3 hours a week.
Oh, absolutely.
I
That's
thought
why I
that
got
too.
married.
That's why when I started Jedi Council Speaks, it was just me. Yeah, after the first, 10, 12 episodes, everybody's like, for crying out loud, you could put something else in there, because you're boring after 2 hours. I even had friends calling me, seriously, dude, do you really like to hear yourself talk that much?
Come on, you're boring after 5 minutes. What are you talking?
Love you, Gary.
Love you too.
This is Gary, my partner here. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Gary Bowden. I've been podcasting for about 2 years now with Bob. and I guess I'm the resident expert in Star Wars.
You like to think you are.
Well, I think I am.
Comics and horror and everything.
Well, yeah, for a little group that we got, yeah.
I take that as a challenge.
Challenge accepted.
If somebody's selling a Star Wars Trivial Pursuit out there, we need to sit down and play.
I got one at home.
Well, I'm coming over then.
He randomly
Yeah.
plays.
He's got like every dog-eared copy of every Star Wars quiz book that's been put out since
Perfect.
1977.
Yeah.
Five different color highlighter.
The game was designed by Gary Boughton.
My name is David Ramsey. I do a lot of props. Worked on a couple films. Working currently at the Tri-Cities Opera, where I have unfair access to power tools.
Yeah, big workshop.
And a big workshop. A 30 foot by 50. Yeah, it's a 30 foot by 50 foot space that I can make a mess in. So it's wonderful. And when I paint, I don't kill the birds. 'Cause we have 6 birds at home, so that's kind of a bad thing.
I know where I'm going to get my TARDIS built now.
Not a problem.
We'll talk later.
So yeah, mainly with the Mandalorian mercs, I work on a lot of armor, a lot of weapons, a lot of blasters. I just can't stop making blasters and weapons and armor and droids. Now I'm working on droids, scaling up to droids now. I don't have any that actually move, but working on a lot of static displays because, well, I can't stop myself.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
See, I have a Star Wars shirt. So that's about as far as it goes with the costumes.
I have the movies.
We play right now.
Yeah,
I have the
Ironically,
I would love it. Would love it.
Ironically, all of us actually met through costuming first, and then, as we got going, I'm kind of like, oh, you're on this podcast. That'd be cool too, like.
We've got a group. There's a group in Connecticut. Is everybody a 501st? Is that how it works?
Not everybody.
Well, there's a 501st in Connecticut, and they were at a show. There was like 8 or 9 of them, and they were all in their costumes. And so when I said I want to do an interview with you guys, but I don't want to talk to you as people. I want to talk to you as your character. And it was a riot because
not hard to do.
when we got up, when we're talking to the biker scout. And the biker scout's like, you know what, these other guys, they don't know how to ride. That's why they're just foot soldiers. Then you've got the guy from Hoth talking about, these guys can't handle anything that's not over 50 degrees. And then when I got to the Tusken Raider, it was the best because he flipped up his mask and he said, well, and he started talking in this very proper British accent. It's the sons of Tatooine are very harsh. It was a great thing, and I loved it. Nothing more intimidating than walking into a men's room and seeing 6 guys getting into stormtrooper armor, though.
What's worse is going in there and seeing 6 guys in stormtrooper armor at the urinals. It's like,
Actually, I think we can top that. We're changing in the Target parking lot.
Oh, excellent. Well, we have a video camera over there. Please bring that and we'll set up.
Actually,
Or the staff lounge at the Regal Cinema.
yeah, staff lounge, Regal Cinema. That was another. I think the best moment though is when we were at Speedy Fest and they forgot to give us a changing tent, and we all just kind of looked at each other and went, "Oh well." You sit right there, and everybody's like, "Oh god." They're changing. No.
just everyone, please remember it's very cold out. So.
They're in shrinkage, I swear. So I thought we could start off by kind of giving a brief overview of your views on podcasting. I thought that would be kind of a way to go, only because everybody gets into this idea. I did even with an ideologue in my head going, "Oh, this is easy," and then you run into all these roadblocks along the way, and you start to realize, well, not so simple, So what kind of roadblocks have you guys run into over the years? What's your viewpoint on podcasting? Can anybody do it? How hard is it? What have you run into as you go through? Because I think everybody's from a point of view. So you want to start off? Everybody's looking at you.
Sure. Yes, no, a few. I think I never listened to podcasts going into doing a show. When I was asked to do one with Brian, he said, we got to do something like this. And this came out of Battlestar Galactica Season 1 that our wives gave us Friday nights to watch. Friday Night Geek Fest or whatever it was.
Oh, that sounds familiar.
That's a great idea.
So then when the season ended, we looked at each other and said, "Are you kidding me? We can't give this back. Our wives gave this to us. We can't give it back." So he said, "Why don't we start doing a podcast?" I spent 4 years in radio and hated it, every moment of it. So I did not really want to do this, but then when you're talking about things that are fun, you're not getting paid for it, you don't have ratings, things like that. We really I love doing it. And I would say that the biggest thing that I see is the online community is so nasty. If you're looking for if you're looking to build yourself up in a positive light, you don't want to go
This
online.
isn't the place to be.
We have listened to
Always a critic.
it is. We have listened to so many podcasts that, not that we're going to be critical of them, but they're just nasty. And it is, you want to hear about this mother effing blankety blank 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 blank, and you're like, all right, that's not even intelligent. Now I don't even want to listen to the show anymore. We decided right off the bat that we were just going to be positive about everything, and it can be kind of tough when a creator hands you a book and says, oh, you got to talk about this book. Okay, oh, this is terrible. We don't even know what to do. But we'll mention it somewhere. But it's that is the thing that I think bothers me the most is you spend a little more time explaining, well, no, I'm not like most of the other podcasts. We don't subscribe to the nastiness and the negativity or the, I just heard something, so I'm going to react to it. And then I'm going to put it all out there, and then I'm going to think about it and go, that might not have been the best thing that I could have done. The thing that I've been blown away by is the community, the comic book community in general, since we're a comic book podcast. We'll go to shows now, like we'll go to New York Comic Con, and it's nice because we're kind of treated like nice guys, and not celebrities, but people like to see us. When you've got Greg Capullo, who has a line of 600 people, and he's screaming over going, hey, Matt, we talked in Boston, right? And I'm like, whoa, he's calling me out. And then we'll go chat. Those are the things that you like. And those are the things that have been a lot of fun. You meet a lot of people, people we interview. We spend time with them before we interview them just to make sure that they're going to be a good fit for us. And you kind of hear their pattern of speech, how they're going to talk. You find out if they're in a bad mood or not, because there's nothing worse than sitting down and doing an interview with somebody that doesn't want to be interviewed, is not passionate about their craft. Brian had, and I won't mention names and I won't mention properties, but G.I. Joe. He sat down with the writer, and Brian is passionate about G.I. Joe. Sat down with one of the creators of the comic that, he sat down and was just like, this guy is my hero. So he sat down and threw the first question out about you. You don't realize, your words and your work has painted my youth and blah, blah, blah. And what do these characters mean to you? Do they mean as much? And he said, well, it's a job. And that was his answer to the question. And I looked at that and said, I'm out of here. I can't even, So he finished the interview. So that's why we will talk to somebody before we sit down and interview them. We'll see how they interact with the fans. If there's somebody that we want to have on, simply because you don't want to have somebody on that's somebody that has a bad reputation within the industry, and then you're going to have them on your show. So it's been a lot of fun. I can't comment on any of the technological side because Brian is the one who does everything for the show. I basically, I like to say I'm the guy that puts the butts in the seat. That's, he says I have lead singer syndrome, which is pretty close. But it's so much fun, and it can be very humbling too. At times, like when you get the bad review or when you hear somebody say something. But for the most part, this has just been a great part of my life that you feel like you're giving back to the community that you have loved for so much. And that's why we do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that there are two sides to the podcasting community. I agree with your viewpoint on that. There are those, and I've seen it, who are really nice and they uplift each other. You know what I mean? They try to help. Yep. Hey, and if I get feedback from that group, it's feedback I can work with. By the way, you could do this to fix that filter so it doesn't sound this way when you go and do a live show. Or I get the you suck. Yeah.
I wish you died. Like, okay,
you should all,
thanks for the positive feedback.
You should all jump down the tractor, trash compactor, and let it go. It's like, really, like, how does that help me? Like, there are two types of people, and I think if you get into the podcast, that's what you're going to find. There's two people that are going to, there's either a group that's going to help you, they're going to uplift you, they're going to move you along, they're going to try to move you forward, and there's just a group that they're going to be against you no matter what. And I've learned over the years, and I think you've learned this too, to kind of ignore those people. You kind of, I guess the best way I can put it is like, you have to be the president. Yeah. You have to kind of listen to those naysayers, but if it's just something that's really not really going to help you in the long run, sometimes they're just not worth listening to, and you just move on to people that will listen. And you're creating for a niche audience, and it's kind of hard because you want the majority of the audience to be happy, not a minority to be upset.
Yeah.
So.
And it's we've been lucky too that our community is just some of the nicest people we've ever not met. When
that's the irony behind podcast.
We'll go through, like, one of us will go through some family crisis or a tragedy or a death in the family or something like that, and the outpouring of support and love from these people is amazing. That we don't care about posting it. Hey, my cat just died, and you know, I'm really hurting and I just want to let you guys know, and you know, so I'm kind of out of sorts. And I'll get 50 or 60 blasts just saying, I've been through it, don't, you know, this, you know, and everybody's just loving and supportive. We, right off the bat, got rid of all the negativity, saying, you know what, don't post here. Don't, if you're going to criticize because I say every 30 seconds, don't post here. Which I don't.
It's my experience that eventually, I mean, the people who do post the negative feedback like that, sooner or later they're just going to leave anyway. Yeah, I mean, it's yeah, I mean, it's like I refer to it as basically the internet flash mob. It's like, okay, we have to be hateful at this site now, and then somebody comes along and says, oh, something's going on over here, so they immediately go, and then it's like, where'd they all go?
Yeah.
You know, where'd that negative feedback disappear to? Oh, it's being, you know, lavished on somebody else. You know, but you know, it's I've actually had a good experience. I basically, to me, it's been a hobby. It's been, like you said, it's something I can give back to an industry that I've been, you know, involved in with comics since I was 5 years old. So, you know, and if I have the opportunity to meet, you know, Joe Staton, the guy who drew a comic I can, you know, I've had since then, or to help with, you know, raising charity funds for an artist through the Hero Initiative, something like that. That's what makes it, you know, worth doing all the time. To me, that's what makes podcasting important, because you can actually join that community and help that person.
Yeah, I think one of the things I learned over the years too, I actually got kicked out of the community. I don't just go a small distance, I go the full way. I got kicked out of the a website. I won't name names. Star Wars fans. Sorry, I had something in my throat there. They had an established community, and I came in and I did not fit their niche. I wasn't the guy that fit in with everybody else. And,
you know the new theory of evolution, don't you? if you put a keyboard in a tree with a bunch of monkeys, what you get? A chat room.
This is true.
Eventually, that's the new theory of evolution. Instead of the works of Shakespeare, you get a chat room.
And that's basically what happened. They had their nice little niche of guys, and they all got along. And I came in, and I didn't fit in, and I tried to do some projects, and they didn't appreciate what I was attempting to do. So it came to a boil, and it kind of, we all butted heads. And I was like really depressed about it. I was like, what the heck do I do? Because these guys all hate me. And it's like, after a while, my wife just turns and looks in the room where I podcast, and she goes, would you just leave? And I went, but that means I gotta go on my own. And she's like, yeah, leave. Like, why are you listening to these guys? Just leave them. And I thought, oh my gosh, I need these people. You know, it's like having a pillow. You have to hug it. Like, I have to have this. Yeah. And I found that actually, I was better. Once I let go of the pillow and I went off on my own, I had a better disposition. I think we had a better show, honestly, now than I had by myself, and even when I was running with Ian, only because we left that community. It was kind of like, goodbye. If you're going to be negative, we're going to leave. Sorry, I keep going.
No, it's okay. But see, that's the thing that makes a good podcast. If you don't enjoy what you're talking about, you don't enjoy the atmosphere you're in, you really don't have much of a show. Because the whole thing about a podcast is people coming together to bounce conversation off each other and talk about something passionately. That's what it's all about. And that's why, you know, you guys are popular. That's why you guys are popular. That's why people listen to us, because we're talking about something that people come and listen to us about, something that they feel passionate about. And they can listen to somebody who has those same feelings, those same viewpoints. Yeah, we're not the people writing the stuff, but we're the people enjoying it just like you are. That's why you're listening to us, because we connect.
You notice he didn't say we were popular, but that's okay.
Oh, hey, I'm not trying to blow our own horn.
Dude.
You know, I think the ultimate podcaster is a lot of people overlook is, I think his name's Kevin James, the guy from, oh goodness.
Oh, the King of Queens.
No, not him. I'm the wrong guy. Kevin Smith, thank you, that's right.
Oh, that guy.
Oi.
He's the same size. He is the ultimate podcaster. He is the everyday guy who broke into the scene in Hollywood only because he was himself. He didn't let anybody in Hollywood affect who he was. Matter of fact, I was just on Hulu the other day. He has his own show now on Hulu, which is, I don't know if you guys ever watched it.
Comic Book Guys?
What's that? No, this is a separate one from Comic Book Guys. I forget the name of it. If you go on Hulu now and look up Kevin Smith, he's on there. I forget the name of it, but he pays for a whole bunch of people.
Spoilers.
Thank you, spoilers. That's the name of the show. He pays for people to go see a movie, and then he sits down with them, and they do a live show about, hey, what'd you think of that movie? And that all spawned from his podcast, and I was like, that is so stinking cool. He is the guy who, to me, is a trendsetter. You know,
It
there
is
are
a good
celebrities who do
concept.
it.
I mean, I like the concept. I definitely do that.
If I had the money, I would do it.
Yeah, that's it. If you have the money to do that, that's great. But
Right.
You'd love us then to go to the movies and all that.
Yeah. We have a kind of
Kevin,
unique,
that's a plug, by the way.
we do have a unique scenario. Like when we go to the movies, how do I put it, Gary? We're like Statler and Waldorf when you go to the movies.
I pictured more of an MST3K kind
Well,
of.
yeah, a lot of that.
Especially if I get bored with the movie.
Yeah. Actually,
that's when I started making fun of it.
I wasn't quite sure how these guys were all going to react to like the movies. I'm like, because we were doing just the Clone Wars. We were watching the Clone Wars TV show, kind of like you guys, geek out at my house, watch it, talk about it. It was easy, it was simple. It's like, let's do that. Then last summer we were kind of like, uh-oh, it's summer. What do we do? You know, like we can't have 3 months of dead nothingness. So we're like, hey, let's go start going to the movies. So we went, and what was it? Thor was the first one we went to go see. And I think it was Thor.
I thought it was Last Starfighter, so first one.
Well, that was the one at home.
Retro.
Yeah,
That's the retro ones, yeah.
but we watched Thor. I'm thinking, how serious are we going to take this? I sat down and I'm nervous because I'm like, this is really stupid. I go to watch movies all the time, but now I'm trying to look at it through a different eye, and I'm getting really nervous about what we're going to do. We're sitting there watching like the second or third scene, and it popped into my head, and he said it out loud. He does this all the time. Gary will say what I'm thinking. They walk into the room, and in walks this Chinese dude, and he goes, geez, I didn't know the Chinese people were in Norway. And I kind of went, really? Because that's what I was thinking, dude.
The quote was, I didn't know that the Asians were Vikings.
There we go, we didn't know the Asians were Vikings. And
I like that one better.
I think that version I'm bad at telling the stories behind it. He's better at that.
I'll go upside down.
Go ahead.
Well, I'll say my best friend in South Carolina, Tim, he and I, when I was living down there, we have two totally different views on movies, and it'd be and we appreciated the fact that what the movies do now is put scenes after the credits, because it gives him and I the time during the credits while everybody's walking out of the theater to basically rip the movie apart. It's like, he'd go, well, let's go see Friday the 13th, the remake. And, so we're sitting there during the credits, and he's like, well, what did you think? I was like, okay, let me go through so many plot holes that were in this movie, you literally could drive a truck carrying another movie through those plot holes.
And that's actually why we ended up joining these guys, two guys talking, because that's how they started too. Was
Who's that?
The Two Guys Talking podcast network, Mike Wilkerson and everybody who runs that network. I know I got to plug away.
You wanted the plug.
But these guys are really cool because they started off just I think like all of us did, where they go watch something and two guys sit down and talk about it. I mean, I think that's how every podcast in the world started. I swear.
Well, I'll tell you. I kind of waded into podcasting.
Okay.
When I got my first iPod, and this had to be like 04, 05, somewhere around there, I went on iTunes and I came across About Heroes.
Okay.
I didn't even know the guys originally. And I was like, oh, the podcast about comic books, let's listen to it. And, I think they were on episode 12, and they were doing the big Crisis on Infinite Earth special because it was episode 12. And they at the end, they have an email address, and I was like, oh, well, let me write them a quick email because they read them on the air. Sure. And it got to the point where, they're like, wow, these emails are really thought-provoking, and, we didn't think of it like that. And then literally it got to the point where it'd be like, okay, Jeff, we know you're listening, so could you send us an email about this, And eventually, I went out there with them, out to Kentucky. We, did a couple episodes live, and they said, hey, anytime you want to do your own branch, they gave me access to upload stuff to the site. So I kind of, in waves, I started by sending emails, then calling in, then being there, then hosting our own branch version of the site. So
to follow up on what you were talking about, we didn't think anybody listened to our podcast, and then he happened to mention something about Dave Filoni. What'd you say, Gary, about Dave Filoni? That really ticked him off, man.
Well, you know what the WTF stands for?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I changed it from what it actually meant to what the Filoni instead.
Oh.
Yeah, that kind of set off Dave Filoni. And I got a phone call from a rep from LFL. And I was like, wow, I think we actually set somebody off here, guy. I came back to him and he's like, I'm not going to stop using it. I'm like, I'm not asking you to stop using it, just letting you know.
And I've been ripping them since.
Yeah, we didn't actually necessarily think anybody from LFL was listening, much less gave 2 cents about what we were saying. And ironically, they are listening. So Big Brother's watching for us anyway.
No, I was going to say the same thing. It's like basically just because people don't comment on your page, or they may not always have something, that still doesn't mean they don't listen. You have an audience out there that you don't even know about. And the only way you're going to know is if your moderator says, hey, you guys got a whole lot of traffic. What did you do / say / whatever?
We got that too.
We noticed that too. When we did our very first show, we posted it, and we were like, and Brian called me up and said, we just got 9 downloads. And I'm like, holy cow, 9 downloads? 9 people that we don't know
seem like a lot, right?
that are listening to the show.
Wow.
And then a little later on, maybe 20 or 30 shows in, it got up to about 100. And we're like, oh, this is the greatest thing of all time. And we made it, this is when I think I started to realize people were listening, was when Spawn did a relaunch with David Hein writing it and Brian Haberlin doing the art. We reviewed it and I absolutely loved it. I'm like, this is a horror book, this is amazing, I love how they did it. Going really gushing like crazy. And David Hein got in touch with us and said, oh, thanks for the kind words, that was really nice. And I said, oh, you know, you wrote it, I just was saying how cool it was. And I said, if you ever see Todd McFarlane in the hallway, now I realize David Hein lives in England and Todd McFarlane is in Arizona. I said, so when you see Todd McFarlane in the hallway at work, just tell him I want to do an interview. So David Hein either called or did something. I got an email 3 days later that said, Todd McFarlane is expecting a call from you at 3 o'clock and he'll give you an hour.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there going, and I mean, and it's funny because I'm not that big I wasn't a big Todd McFarlane fan at the time. I probably had more Todd McFarlane toys than I did Spawn comics. And all of a sudden, I'm getting panicky, going, what am I going to ask this guy? What am I going to do? What am I going to? So I sent him a bunch of questions, said, this is what I'm going to ask you. And then when we got on the phone, I go, did you get the questions? He goes, I can't answer it. What do I even need to be here for? If I can't answer questions about myself, go ahead. So I'm like, wow, this guy's really cool. We ended up talking for a half hour in the interview. Then we spoke for another half hour on the phone afterwards, and I will never, ever, ever say anything negative about that guy. I will defend him to the end, no matter what, because this guy was a guy that, you know, he had no reason. I mean, we were nothing. And he reached out, and it was interesting because the downloads probably tripled or quadrupled after that one interview, and it never went away and just kept going and going and going. And you know, when you get somebody, we do a gaming thing, a gaming challenge every summer. We get a picture from a guy in France with a picture of the screenshot that says, you know, you completed Zelda, or whatever game we were doing at the time. And in the background, you see the Eiffel Tower. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty funny. Is that a picture? He's like, no, I live in France. I live outside of Paris. And it's amazing. We get a lot of downloads from Xingzhou, China. Because where we use Podomatic, you can see where the downloads come from.
We've used Podomatic before.
And that is, the scariest thing is when you're like, holy cow, somebody's listening to us in Brussels. You know, all over the world we get downloads. And
I had 1,000 downloads in Zimbabwe, and I'm like, who does that?
Yeah,
it's almost Nigerian princes.
Yeah, we had, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had John Wetton on the show, who was the bass player vocalist for Asia, King Crimson, UK. And I've known John for a while, and all of a sudden, when we put that up, the downloads in Krakow, Poland exploded because he has a huge following in Poland.
Wow.
And they were all coming out of Krakow. So you notice that when you get these, you know, you get interviews and, people that you may not think have niche audiences somewhere, all of a sudden you get an explosion of downloads from one particular area. That, it could be their hometown, it could be one person downloading it in 500,000 times, but we just go by the numbers. We don't care if it's one person 5,000 times.
You get David
Hasselhoff
on and you'll be huge in Germany.
Huge in Germany.
The Hoff is listening.
I mean, we had a situation where we had a notorious comic figure come on, and I mean, literally within like 6 hours of me uploading the podcast, bleedingcool.com had that. And I'm like, because I get an email, like, you're on Bleeding Cool? I'm like, how the heck did I, what?
Yeah, it was
within 6 hours. I downloaded it at like midnight, went to bed, I get up at 6 a.m. and there's already a story on Bleeding Cool with like 100 comments.
Yeah, it was crazy because we recorded on Saturday, and we did the interview very, very nice, very polite and whatnot, and he told me about us being on Bleeding Cool. I'm like, dude, we're #1 on Google. Like, if you type in this guy's name, we're there, #1. I'm like, how in God's green earth do you get to #1 on Google? You gotta be insane with traffic for that. So, I mean, yeah, people are definitely watching. It was crazy.
And back when I was still, in South Carolina, just helping those guys out, one of the things I did, I sent an email to Marvel, asking them, hey, who would I speak to about maybe trying to set up some interviews for them on the show?
Sure.
And literally within like 48 hours, I got a phone call from Jim McCann.
Nice.
And he puts me in touch with somebody. He's like, hey, well, she wants to talk to you. Hold on, I can't remember her name now. But she goes, well, we'd like to see if we can have an interview with you with Joe Quesada. And I'm like, okay, sure.
Oh, that's all.
Okay. Now, bear in mind, this was back literally, I sent this out in November. One More Day was about to come out in the comics, so this was just before One More Day.
Nice.
And I'm like, okay, well, it's Joe Quesada, so we're going to be like on a long line of people that he's going to talk to, so we'll probably get to him about like, March. So I go, oh, yeah, I mean, anytime he wants to talk to us, we'd love to. She goes, great, he's got about half an hour tomorrow at 3. Do you guys want to, do you want to set it up now? We can give you his cell phone number and you can give him a call.
Wow.
And I'm like, huh?
Right.
Yeah, sure. I think that works for us.
I got to tell you, one of the coolest things, and this is probably the greatest thing that has happened, at least to me, since doing the show, was we got, we go to a lot of the New York City shows, so we know all the New York guys, Jimmy Palmiotti, Billy Tucci. Those guys are just great friends of ours, and just incredible people to begin with. And Mark Sparacio, who is mostly known as a painter, was doing a book, and he went up to Jimmy Palmiotti, went up and said, "Hey, I want you to do a Jonah Hex story." But and he's like, "Well, can you draw a horse?" So Mark Sparacio drew a horse and said, "All right, you're hired. You can do this one book."
Right.
So then he went up to Billy Tucci and said, "I have no clue about Jonah Hex. Hopefully I'm not going to blow this for anybody with this story," but he goes, "I have no clue about Jonah Hex. What do I do?" And Billy Tucci goes, "Oh, I got this friend, the Madman. You'll love him. He's into Sergeant Rock, and he's into just Jonah Hex and all these characters, so reach out to this guy." So he reached out to me, and I gave him a bunch of references at a show. And kind of got him back, and then about 2 weeks after I saw him for the last time, he said, "I'm just getting ready to do photos for the book. Do you want to come down and maybe be in it?" And I'm like, "Oh, absolutely." Now Jonah Hex it's one of my favorite characters. This was a dream come true for me to think I was going to be in a panel. However, I ended up being in 90% of the book. Brian and I both did that. We were Elmsford and Blackie, and we were the two bad guys in this book. It's Jonah Hex, I want to say 37. So go out, when you're done, go out and hit the bins and go find it. But we were in 90...
royalties too.
I wish I did. Well, you know what, the royalty is in my heart.
Because he's bought all the copies.
Right. Because
signing them all.
To be in this book, and the last panel is Jonah Hex shooting us in a bar. And I was able to get a page of that and send it to my dad for a Father's Day gift a bunch of years ago, saying, "Whoever would have thought your love of comics would get me killed in a bar in the Wild West." But it was, I mean, to me right there, it was after I got that book and saw it on the stands and opened it up and said, "That is me, and that looks exactly like me." It was pretty, I was done, let the rapture begin. I can go now, I'm done.
We had kind of an ironic story like that too. We met this local artist we didn't even know anything about. His name was Eric Maruszczak. I'll plug him out there for him. He runs pepperink.com. And Eric, I didn't know about this guy. We were at, what was it, Speedy Fest, right? This is a local hot air balloon rally that we go to every year. Yep. We sweat our balls off. I'll say it on air. I don't care. Yeah, we sweat our balloons off. We're out there in armor and kids. So like, "Hey, everybody!" And sweat's pouring down your face, the inside of that helmet. But you're like, "Hey!" And Eric walks by, and he's a local artist. He just comes in, and he's shaking hands with guys. And he says to my wife, he says, "I don't know if you know anything about this Star Wars convention thing that's going on in Florida. I'm going down in a couple weeks." And I said, "Oh yeah, we're going in a couple weeks too." She was cross-stitching, not really paying attention. She goes, "Yeah, I'm going down to actually draw one of the big murals on the floor." And that was the first time I saw my wife stop cross-stitching and look up at him and say, "And who are you?" And he says, "Oh, I'm Eric Maruszczak. I'm local." And my wife's like, "Oh, really? Like, where do you live?" We found out he lives like 3 blocks from my house.
That's awesome.
I'm like, wow. This guy lived 3 blocks from my house. So then she's like, "Oh, get over here." She's like, "No, get over here." And I'm like, I was fighting her. It's like, "But I'm trying to take pictures." "No, get over here now." So I get over there and I start talking to Eric and found out he was commissioned to draw the big chalk mural, which was on the floor for Celebration 5. Not only was he commissioned to do it, but he was told who the new character was for Clone Wars Season 4. he had a rendering of it, but he couldn't tell us who the character was. And he built the chalk mural so that Saturday morning, he left that part blank. So when George did his little interview in the morning, which Gary and I watched, we were both like, boring. But we didn't care about that part because we just wanted to see who the new character was, which ended up being Savage Opress. And then Eric, as soon as they released Savage Opress, he was the first guy to draw it. And the cool thing about it was, this is a hometown hero drawing the first rendering of Savage Opress in public, and we were all like, this is awesome. And I said to Eric, I'm like, this is so cool, we're plugging you, we're going, nuts on you. What I didn't know is he decided, he had told everybody at the con, he was not taking interviews from anyone but the Galaxy Cast team. And I was awesome. Like, that was so cool. Matter of fact, he torched off the Force.net. If anybody knows TFN, they're run by LFL, right? Huge. These guys are like, they are the quintessential Star Wars podcast. He said no to them and said, but I'm going to let these guys interview me over here. I got stares from TFN, like you wouldn't believe. I was like, hi Dan Curto. Don't hate me.
You find a Wampa's head in your bed.
I was expecting death threats to come my way or something. Well, it wasn't exclusive, and that was really cool. That was like the I Ching moment for me, to be exclusive for that artist.
Yeah, it wasn't just the Force.net, but it was also Fox News,
yeah, that's right.
ABC News. Everybody might have.
TV, I wanted to interview him. He said no. I was like, who does that? That was just, to me, that was amazing. And that says something about, not only did he have loyalty to us, but he had loyalty to us because we were from the same town, and he understood that town branding sometimes means everything. These guys are from Binghamton, so am I. I'm going to stand behind them. As a matter of fact, we stood behind him so much, we got invited to Celebration 6, and I got a pass to get in and everything. So we're now part of the press corps. He fixed just for him standing up for us, which was really cool.
Now the thing that I have to go back with that story is a hot air balloon convention or show. Is this something that's, obviously I'm not from this area.
They're called balloon rallies is actually what they're referred to.
And that your wife was sewing at this thing.
My wife sews everywhere.
Okay, so this is not something that you would, I'm
sorry, my wife's a
balloon sewing, is she building a balloon while she's there?
No. Like my hobby is costuming and podcasting, her hobby is seamstressing. It kind of works hand in hand, actually.
It does.
Hey, honey, can you make this jumpsuit?
But the most important part of the story rationalizes an important part of the Star Wars universe. One of the reasons why stormtroopers can never hit their targets is they got sweat in their eyes.
Yeah, you can't see a dang thing out of that helmet, man. Yeah, you could not hit the broadside of a barn with a helmet on. I'm telling you right now, not a full helmet, no way.
I'd love to actually get guys in stormtrooper armors out to actual rifle range just to
There's
see.
a Mythbusters episode waiting to happen.
There you go.
Great and Hari, I know you follow me. Are you listening to this? Do it. Do it. I'd love to see it.
I think the funniest moment we've had on our site was with the original group, and we had Peter Cullen on for both the release of Transformers in the theaters and the release on DVD.
Wow.
And if you've ever listened to Peter Cullen, he is hilarious. He's the funniest guy. And Omar, he's like, Mr. Cullen, you can call me Peter. I can. Sir, he's gone on for like half an hour about how Peter Cullen changed his life just by being Optimus Prime. He's like, could I ask you a huge favor? Could you record my outgoing voicemail message for me? I was like, yeah, sure. So now if you call Omar's number, it's like, this is Optimus Prime. You've reached Omar's number. Leave a message. Don't make me angry. And I called him the other day, and he's like, this is like 5 years later, and he's still got that message there.
Did you take it off?
No.
All right, so before we take some questions, I thought I would throw out there two things that we could give out. Who's the first celebrity you interviewed? So I'll ask that. Just give you a brief lowdown on what the experience is like, if you can remember. I know for me I can remember, but I don't know about you guys.
For me on the website, it was when we had Joe Quesada, because I called in and because we were like, I have to ask this question just for the sheer audacity of it. It was like, Mr. Quesada, are you going to bring back Rom to Space Night anytime soon? No. That was it.
Good job. Who was the first person you interviewed?
Well, with me it was because I'm still in sidekick status. But with me it was actually the guys from the Comic Book Hall of Fame. They're actually here on location today, but they're doing some very big things, and I didn't realize it till I did the legwork that, wow, these guys are huge. They're going to be somebody amazing. After that, it was meeting Matthew Dow Smith. Yeah, I haven't met the doctor yet. Hoping, but yeah, but I mean, just that was the most memorable interview I've ever had, because I don't think I've ever seen in person artwork that they brought on and just been able to talk with somebody that's so down to earth like that. I mean, that was not for, nothing. That was popping my podcast cherry.
Yeah,
that was.
You have to remember, this is actually also Dante's first comic convention ever.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And, I'm switching mics.
Look at this, you get two of them in your face.
It's true. Well, when you
He's getting mics everywhere.
When you're sidekick status, you gotta be flexible, guys. That's one thing everybody needs. But no, it was just meeting the Comic Book Hall of Fame guys and talking to them and just developing things from there. But yeah, just meeting them and sitting down and building that rapport was absolutely phenomenal for me.
Who's your first celebrity?
The first interview that I did for the show online was a Skype interview, which I was terrified to do in the first place because, you hear that boing, it's like, am I recording? What's going on? What's happening?
That's the only thing about going live, like hearing, and I was like, you're really
But do we have any Canadians in the audience here? Okay, we've got one.
One guy.
Richard Comely, who is, he created Captain Canuck. And this was a book that as a young kid ended up in my drugstore in Connecticut. Bought it, thought it was the greatest thing I ever read in my entire life. So when we were doing interviews and like just starting to get the show, there was a story about him. I contacted him. I said, can I call you and maybe do an interview? And that's exactly what we did. I ended up chatting with him. Great guy. But that was the first interview that I ever did. And for a lot of people, it might not have been the huge interview that we, things that we've done later on. But that was magical. My wife's putting groceries away in the background as I'm talking to him. My daughters are trying to come up and ask me questions. But just a great memory.
For me,
actually, I remember Captain Canuck in Utica, in central New York. We had that in a couple of different stores there.
And it was number 9. Everybody has number 9. It's the one that showed up everywhere.
Well, for me, it was, ironically, it was Ray Park. If nobody knows who he is, he played Darth Maul. He was Snake Eyes in the G.I. Joe movie. He's done a lot of stunt action type of things. There's a good thing Ray Park was a nice guy, because I was between being a nervous wreck and pacing the damn floor. I was actually at Syracuse Hero Convention, which was an old convention a while ago that they used to have almost every year at Syracuse.
That was Jeff Watkins, wasn't it?
Yeah, Jeff Watkins was running it.
I know Jeff. We have an auction going on at his store right now.
Yeah, great guy. I was there, and Ray Park was there, and I was like, I'm going to interview Ray Park. And I was so nervous. I went over and I asked him, like, I felt like that little geeky kid with like the zit in his nose, like, can I interview? He's like, sure, come back and at the end of the con when I'm not busy and we can interview. We had a blast with the guy anyway. I mean, at one point, Ray Park's kind of a kid. If you've never met him, he found out we all had lightsabers, including the Darth Maul lightsaber, and he's like, well, let's go play. And he literally went out in the parking lot. We're all like dueling out in the parking lot.
Wait. So you've got Darth Maul. Darth Maul, and you guys are basically lightsabering it up, just
with Darth Maul.
With Darth Maul. Yeah. You got owned.
Oh yeah, no,
that was still awesome.
It was totally awesome. Get killed by Darth Maul. I was like, yeah. Well, the best part was we were sitting out there, and all of a sudden you hear over the loudspeakers, "Could Ray Park please return to his table? You have a line of autographers." And we walk back in, and there's a line going out around the convention floor, out the door, out the hall. He comes in, he looks at the guy, he's got this look like, "But Mom," he goes, "I'm sorry, but I had to play." So he comes over and he sits down and starts signing autographs again. Well, my buddy Ian was with me at the time, and he kept telling me, wait. So I'm standing, I'm like pacing, I'm like all the way across the convention floor. I know Ray Park saw me there, because I just guarantee he did. And I'm just pacing, I'm like, whatever. So finally Ian goes, okay, go. Because I think he was sick of telling me no more. And I went over and I interviewed Ray Park, and he was so cool about it. I sat down, we talked a little bit. He goes, okay, now that you've gotten used to the fact that I'm a celebrity, I'm a guy like you, just ask me questions. He's like, it's not a big deal. I was like, cool. And then we had a great conversation, him and I. It was probably the best interview I've ever done, actually, because he was like, I'm just a guy. When some people ask me, what's it like to interview so-and-so? I'm like, they're a person. like you, like me, like anybody else.
That's like with Peter Pollard.
Forget everything else.
He's so personable. He was like,
Right.
and he came back. He's like, oh, I'd love to have be back on your show.
Right.
Call me anytime. And gives us like his cell phone number and say, oh, hey, okay, we're gonna call you. Would you like us to, It's like, oh yeah, sure, I'll make time for you. Yeah.
Right, and it's I've had people. Let me wrap this up. One last thing that we can do here before, if anybody has any questions. Everybody's asked me, like, what's the one thing you would say to every new podcaster? So let me ask you guys, what would you say to every new podcaster out there? They could say, you got 30 seconds, go.
Enjoy yourself. I mean, if you're doing this, you might as well be doing it to enjoy yourself. I've listened to podcasts where literally it sounds like, they could be talking about comic books or window blinds, and it doesn't really matter to them. It's like, yeah, and, the new issue came out this week. Just, if you're going to do it, do what you enjoy, and make that part of it.
Excellent. What would you say?
I mean, I pretty much with Jeff, you have to enjoy yourself. You have to have a passion. And you have to remember to breathe. You can't just sit there going on a tangent nonstop and keep saying it, and then you're like, that's horrible feedback in the microphone. But yeah, you have to enjoy yourself, and you have to have somebody that you're casting with that's good. I call it the Abbott and Costello syndrome.
Right.
Because if you don't have somebody that you can podcast with, then you really don't have much of a show, because you're sitting there, so, yeah, stuff. And they're like, yeah, stuff. You can be as passionate in the world about something, but if you don't meet somebody halfway, you've got nothing.
Right.
I would definitely say keep it positive. There's enough negativity out there in the world, let alone in the podcast world. Focus on the positive things. Focus on the things that that make you happy. Don't read a book and go, oh, this thing's terrible. I can't wait to rip it apart. You find the things. If you read something that you absolutely gush and love, talk about it. When you watch the Avengers movie, talk about how awesome it was. Don't talk about how bad Captain America's boots were. Because I caught myself doing that. Oh, this is the greatest movie of all time, but Captain America's boots were horrible. And that's not the right mentality you should have going into it.
I do that with my trade reviews, where I do the trade papers. Like, I love this book, but it sucks for the price.
It's like the Staples.
My one advice that everybody asked me, like, what would you say? I told them, there is nothing you can't do. Nothing.
That's right.
Nothing.
That's right.
Everybody said to me, what, you want to do a podcast about this? Do it. Nobody else has done it? Great, you got a niche. Nobody else has done it before. I want to get sponsors for my show. Great, do it. And it's kind of, well, how do you do that? Go out and ask. You have nothing to lose. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like my brother and I came up with the 5 philosophies for teaching. I'm gonna out him now. He's gonna hate me for this, but the 5 philosophies for teaching we had were really simple. It was Bill Durham. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie. My favorite quote from the movie is, "Don't think it only hurts the ball club." That's one of my podcasting rules. Pull the trigger is one of my main ones. When in doubt, pull the trigger. If you don't know if it's gonna work, put it out there. See if it happens. If it works, you have people listening. If you don't, you'll know not to do that again. Just do it.
Actually, if it works, you'll have a few people listening. If it doesn't work, you'll have tons more people listening.
Right. But a lot of people have always asked me, how do you guys make that work? And I'm like, we just get up and we do it. We don't wait for people. We don't let anybody else tell us how to do it. We're just going to go out there and we're going to do it. And there's nothing you can't do in podcasting. There's nothing. So don't let anybody hold you back. Don't let anybody talk you out of it. Don't let anybody negative with you. Just do it. It's the Nike motto, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What would you say, Gary?
My advice is just be yourself. If you don't like something, say you don't like it, but don't trash it or nothing. But, I just have it.
Don't trade your values in for a quickie interview with someone.
Right, yeah. Don't be like, oh, well, I hate this guy, but I'm going to go interview him right now. This will be fun.
well, that's why I think it'd be fun to interview Filoni.
Well, yeah, we're taking him to Dave Filoni at Celebration 6. Wow. I might be bringing a coffin back. I've got one built already. I'm waiting for Gary to come back in a coffin.
Remember, no disintegrations.
Right.
Who's going to kill me?
Oh, yeah.
You could probably get sponsors for that too.
Well, I'm thinking, you get Ray for the funeral.
If you have Ray Park do security, he's safe.
Right, there you go.
The coffin will be coming through with stickers on it from all the different sponsors.
I'm thinking more like Gary Bowden's funeral, brought to you by the Galaxy Cast.
Taco Bell endorsed this. That's great.
You never know, maybe 501st will sponsor you.
Maybe. All right, so before we leave, because I know we are running over, but the last panel ran over a little bit too. Any questions from any out there about podcasting? Something you want to know about it?
Yeah. Do you need any special equipment for that, or?
Yeah, I always get that question. Like, what do you need? It can be simple. It could be as simple as going out and I've had guys use game headphone mics.
Yeah.
I live in
you can start simple.
I use a $100 podcast mixer kit that I bought on Amazon and a laptop. And that's, it's 2 mics, it's 2 headphones, it's a little mixing board, and the software.
See, I'm extreme. I'll admit I'm on the extreme side, but it's because that's my craft. At school, I teach kids how to use sound and light boards. It's kind of like what I do as a music teacher. I also teach them the tech side of things. So I have a lot of high-tech stuff.
And where would you find someone else to do the podcast with? Because I really, right now, I don't really know anybody else who'd share my weird interests, but...
Well, you don't have to necessarily have somebody who shares and is the A to your B. You more like, sometimes you want to have the X to your B, or the X to your A. Because, let's face it, if you don't have, you don't have to agree with everything that you're talking about. That doesn't make for good conversation in the first place. So if you have somebody that you're close with, like Jeff and I, we used to work together. That's how he brought me in, because you know what? On our breaks, we'd sit there and choose fat. You're like, you know what? You should come over and do this sometime.
You basically recorded a show on your breaks.
Yeah. Exactly. That's it. Anybody that you've ever had that type of conversation with that you really enjoyed, whether it be you guys agreed about everything, agreed about some things, or agreed about nothing. If it's worth the conversation, that's your member.
And also, like, where would you find a mixing board besides Amazon? Just go out there somewhere?
There's all sorts of places. If you... you can start Radio Shack, although I suggest not.
eBay.
eBay. My e-chain is Musician's Friend. If you go on musiciansfriend.com, they've got great stuff. By the way, the Guitar Center runs them too. So if you go to your local Guitar Center, if there's one around, they've got all Musician's Friend equipment. Those guys are great at helping podcasters start. If you tell them I'm podcasting, they're going to be like, all right, here you need this, and this. Then they'll lay it out for you.
And if you sit if you come out to our table and you see our podcast setup, one thing you'll notice is our mics, actually, we didn't go out and actually get the little rubber cushions to put over the mics we actually have 2 socks. My girlfriend basically, I was like, I'm going to go out to Radio Shack, and she's like, well, these are brand new socks. Here, she just basically took a pair of fluffy socks and just threw them over the mics for us. And it worked.
Great.
That's great.
I used to work in radio also, and it was like one of the things we used to do at the radio station all the time. It was like, okay, there we go.
Now, to help you with that really quick, I'll give you the cheapy version of what we first started doing. We had a laptop, which was the price of the laptop. We had Audacity, which is a free program, which we still use.
Which is what we use.
Which is
what I have.
Amazing.
I don't use Audacity anymore. I use Mixcraft, but they bought it for us, so I can't argue with it.
And then we had like a $40 Logitech microphone that we put in the front of the room, and when we would have to do our points, we would lean into the microphone. And, yes, I agree with that point, and then we would pull away. And the quality was still really good. I mean, we listened to those old shows, and I'm like, wow, you know what? That was cheap magic. Yeah, and it works because it doesn't matter how. It's like the guy that wants to be the greatest hockey player of all time goes out and buys a $600 pair of skates, but he can't skate. The skates are not going to make you any better.
No,
they'll help you, but you have to have. You should have a voice to begin with. You know what it's not nasally when you're doing this, unless you're doing a nasal program.
Yeah.
But you forgive me because I got a cold today. But
I think you sound great.
Oh, well, thank you.
I love it. I love it. But that's it. You can do it cheap, and you can just have fun with it. You know, do it that way. That way there's not much of an investment, and then if you wanted, like we did, we went out and bought that same kit. The mixing board, microphones, poles, done.
Yeah, we kept it simple. All because you don't know. You get in it, maybe you hate it. You don't like what you're doing, and if you make that investment, then you feel tied to the equipment like you have to do it. But if you go cheap at first, and it takes off, and the other thing too, like he's saying, just because you have pro equipment doesn't make you a pro.
That's true.
A lot of guys think that, so.
And finally, if it does take off, what's the best way to get sponsors? Just go to local businesses? Or
You call. That's what we did.
That's what we did.
I was on Facebook one day and said, oh wow, 80stees.com? I love those things. I contacted them and said, if we put a spot in our show for you guys, would you give us 4 shirts a month and we'll do 4 commercials? Absolutely. So this is an 80stees.com Ghostbusters baseball jersey. And that's just from me calling. We do an Out of the Long Box segment, which is older books, so I contacted this company and said, hey, can we pick $20 worth of books a month? And you can sponsor a segment. Perfect. So we're not necessarily making, well, we're not making money, but we're not losing it. Like when you make that initial investment of the $200 for your equipment.
Yeah,
so
we're in the same boat. We're like on the verge of making money. Like we're both going, when's it gonna happen?
My wife keeps asking when's it gonna happen.
We keep like, just about we're about to make money, oh crap, we gotta buy equipment. Like every time it happens. But like, I think one of these days it's gonna happen where we're actually gonna start making money and it's gonna start coming back in.
I'd like both with that.
Yeah,
like I do book reviews for like trade paperbacks, and a lot of them I'll get from instocktrades.com.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And I'll just email them and say, hey, I want to do a couple of reviews of stuff, and they'll say, oh, well, here's a couple of books, and then as the review, I put the link right on there for In-Stock Trades.
Okay.
And yeah, like you said, ask. That's how we got our sponsors on the back of my card. We went to the shop, Fat Cat Comics, Charging Star, Jupiter Games. We said, your local shops, we run a podcast, it's an online radio show. Would you be willing to give us XYZ? Fat Cat Comics oftentimes gives us our prizes for our competitions. Charging Star, they let us come in and do stuff with them. So, and Jupiter Games, we actually went in and did a podcast of a Warhammer game for them.
Yep.
And so there's an exchange of services, but you got to offer something too. Be willing to offer something for them. Do a commercial for them. We offered a pro commercial, and they loved it. So, any other questions out there? People curious about how to get into this field? Got one in the back there, Tara.
Yeah. Suppose.
Yeah, go ahead and use the mic.
Okay. Suppose if you have a very nice laptop, and I have an HP, and that I've recently have been told that all of the things that I can do either on the iPad or the iPhone, I can do it with my laptop. So my question to you guys is that how can I use my laptop for a podcast?
Okay. You guys want to shoot?
Well, like I said, Matt and I were saying, we use a program called Audacity.
That would be where I start.
Yeah. That would be if you're looking for just bare bones, the basic program, use a program called Audacity.
At a rock bottom price, free.
Yeah, exactly.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's a great free program. We still use it on the laptop here. My laptop's like, I don't know, I think Calvin Coolidge was using it originally. It's that old, but it's
online at audacity.sourceforge.net. Or just Google Audacity recording program and it'll come up.
And then you'll find like whatever podcast mixer set you get, there's usually a software for that to be able to connect that to your laptop.
And the patch to fix the connections that you're not going to have.
Yes.
We found that one out too.
And always play with the software before you try to post it online. If you're not comfortable with your equipment, then you really got nothing.
Right.
I do DJ work on the side, and I've been doing that for years and a bunch of other tech work. If you don't know how to use your software, you're sunk.
Yeah.
You just can't grab something and all of a sudden know it, because something's going to happen. You're going to have to pause it. You're going to have to re-edit something. You don't know it, you're sunk.
But that is the brilliance of pre-recorded podcasts versus live ones, and I learned the hard way. Because I tried to do live at first, that's awful.
Yeah,
you can't edit. There's no edit button while you're going.
The downside of it is the original group were using a Mac at the time.
Do you know that it's time for the next thing?
Yeah, we've been running late.
And literally they had to re-record the same podcast like 4 times because every time they were recording it would crash.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, nothing's worse than having to try to tell the same jokes
over and over
again for like 4 hours.
I'd have to laugh at them. All right, any other questions before we go here? One last one, then we gotta stop.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Okay, folks, we're gonna stop only because I know the armor making panel's out there chomping at the bit. So thank you very much for coming, and I hope that you guys enjoy your day here at Albany Comic Con. And again, cards are up here. You got questions, we can answer them after the fact.
And as we say on our website, stay geeky.
See, at mine, I say, may the force be with those who listen.
I just say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.